Far away in a corner of the galaxy there was a race known as the Virelians. They were peaceful beings, gentle in nature and curious about life. For thousands of years they had lived in harmony with their worlds, building shining cities that floated above oceans and hung beneath the clouds of crystal blue skies. They were artists, scientists, and dreamers. Their technology was advanced, yet they never used it for war. They believed knowledge and cooperation could solve any problem. For a long time, they were right. Then came the Cracks' dominion. No one knew where the Cracks came from. Some said they were born in the deep void beyond the known galaxy, where even light hesitated to travel. Others believed they were machines that had turned on their creators long ago. Whatever they were, they brought death. The Cracks spread like a storm of fire, conquering one system after another. They did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They destroyed everything in their path. When the Virelians first heard of the Cracks, they thought it was a rumor, a tale from distant stars meant to cause fear. But soon, the first refugee ships arrived. They carried survivors from neighboring worlds, their hulls scorched and their eyes hollow. The refugees spoke of entire planets burned to ash, of cities turned to dust within hours. The Virelian leaders held emergency councils. Some wanted to send peace messages. Others said they should flee. But before they could decide, the Cracks were already upon them. The first attack came without warning. 3 of the Virelian colonies vanished within minutes. The enemy ships appeared like shadows, silent and black, moving through space faster than any known drive. The Virelian defense fleets tried to fight back, but their weapons were weak compared to the Cracks' power. Their plasma cannons barely scratched the enemy hulls, while the Cracks' beams tore through entire formations. Thousands died in the first day of war. Panic spread quickly. Civilian transports rushed to escape, flooding the hyperspace lanes. Families were separated. Children cried as they were loaded onto ships bound for nowhere. The Virelian capital world, Laretha Prime, became a place of chaos. The once beautiful towers that touched the clouds now burned, their crystal walls collapsing under bombardment. The peaceful people who once painted stars and composed songs of unity now ran for their lives. Within weeks, the Virelian Empire, once proud and vast, fell apart. Only a handful of ships managed to survive, led by a woman named Commander Relina. She was not a general by training. She had been a researcher, studying stellar energy. But when all others fell, she took command. Gathering what remained of her people, she led them into the darkness of space, away from their destroyed worlds. They found refuge in the dense clouds of a dying nebula, a place the crack scanners could not easily penetrate. There, among the swirling gases and debris of dead stars, they built temporary shelters inside their damaged ships. It was a cold, lonely place, lit only by the faint glow of distant suns. The Virelians called it the Shadow Haven. Days turned into weeks. Supplies began to run out. The people were hungry, frightened, and tired. Many had lost their families. Some had lost the will to live. Commander Relina tried to keep hope alive, reminding them that as long as they were breathing, their civilization was not dead, but even she felt the weight of despair. Every night she looked at the shattered remains of her homeworld's hologram and whispered a silent apology to those who didn't survive. Outside, the nebula was eerily quiet. Occasionally the sensors picked up distant flashes. Battles happening far away, other races trying and failing to resist the cracks. The galaxy was falling apart, one star at a time. The Virelians knew they could not hide forever. The cracks were patient hunters. They would eventually find them. Inside one of the ships, a young technician named Lauren sat at the communication console, staring at the dead monitors. He had joined the fleet as an apprentice engineer, but now he spent his days trying to listen for any signal, any voice from the stars. Every frequency was silent. It was as if the universe itself had stopped speaking. The Virelian children asked their elders why no one was coming to save them. The elders didn't have an answer. They used to believe that if anyone was in trouble, the great alliances of the galaxy would unite and help. But those alliances were gone. The wars had been too many. The empires that once ruled with pride had either surrendered or been wiped out. The stars that had once shimmered with promise now looked cold and distant. Some of the survivors began to question if they should have fought harder, or if running had been the right choice. Commander Relina knew those questions had no answers. Every day was a test of survival. She ordered the ships to remain silent to avoid sending signals that could reveal their location. She also told her people to believe, even if there was nothing left to believe in. Still, hope is a strange thing. It doesn't always vanish completely. Even when crushed, it hides deep inside hearts, waiting for the smallest spark. For the Varelians, that spark was memory, the memory of who they had been. Some still sang the old songs softly, so the children could sleep. Some painted pictures on the cold metal walls of the oceans and mountains they once loved. They refused to forget, even if the galaxy had forgotten them. One night, as the fleet drifted silently through the nebula, the stars outside flickered. A strange shadow passed across the viewing ports. Some thought it was another Krax patrol, and panic spread through the corridors. But it was only a meteor shower, small fragments of an ancient comet burning up in the nebula's gases. The glowing trails filled the sky like falling embers. For a brief moment, the Varelians stood together, watching in silence. It reminded them that beauty could still exist, even in the darkest places. After the light faded, Commander Relina gathered her officers. "We will not die here," she said softly. "If there is anyone left in the galaxy who can hear us, we will find them." Her words echoed through the small chamber, reaching the tired hearts of her crew. But deep inside, she knew the truth. No one had answered their calls before. No one probably ever would. Still, she gave the order. The technicians prepared a universal distress signal, coded in over 40 languages. It was a cry for help, a desperate message sent into the endless dark. They called it the Light of the Last Ones. The message was short, only a few words. "This is the Varelian fleet. Our worlds are gone. We seek refuge. Please help us." The signal was launched into the stars. Then they waited. Days passed, weeks. Nothing came. The screens remained blank, and the silence returned heavier than before. The youngest began to believe that even the universe had turned its back on them. And yet, far beyond their sensors, beyond the reach of their understanding, something ancient stirred in the void. Somewhere, a machine heard their signal. Somewhere, a forgotten human beacon flickered to life after decades of sleep. But the Varelians did not know that yet. For them, all they had was darkness, hunger, and fading hope. Commander Relina looked out of the viewport one last time before resting. The nebula glowed faintly outside, wrapping their broken ships in mist. "If there are gods among the stars," she whispered, "let them hear us." In that moment, she did not know that her prayer had already been heard. The void was not as empty as it seemed. Something was moving in the deep dark, something powerful, ancient, and human. But for now, the Varelians only had silence, and the fragile hope that someday someone would answer their call before it was too late. The Varelians had been hiding in the cold emptiness of the nebula for weeks now. The silence of space pressed on them like a heavy blanket. Their people were tired, hungry, and afraid. Every day the threat of the Krax seemed closer. Every day the survivors asked the same question: "Will anyone come for us?" Commander Relina tried to answer them with words of hope, but even she felt the fear rising in her chest. They were alone. Absolutely alone. Lauren, the young technician, had spent countless hours staring at the communication consoles, scanning the dark for any trace of a signal. He knew the chances were slim. Many civilizations ignored distress calls, and some had already fallen to the Krax. Still, Lauren worked tirelessly. He adjusted frequencies, rerouted power, and even tried old forgotten codes that had been used for rescue signals centuries ago. Each attempt ended the same way: silence. But Lauren did not give up. He believed that somewhere out there, someone would answer. The Verilians' distress signal was their last hope. They had designed it carefully. Unlike normal calls that could be intercepted or ignored, this one was different. It was coded in over 40 galactic languages, using symbols, tones, and energy patterns designed to catch attention. It contained all the information about their situation, the destruction of their colonies, the location of their remaining fleet, and the urgency of their need. It was a plea sent into the void, a light shining in the darkness, a message that said, "We are here. Please help us." When they first launched the signal, the fleet gathered silently around the main transmitter. Some whispered prayers, others stared out at the nebula's swirling gases. The message traveled far beyond their sensor range, farther than the Verilians could even imagine. Commander Raylena watched the lights of the transmitter pulse in the control room, her hands trembling slightly. She knew that sending the signal was their only chance, but she also knew the chances of anyone actually hearing it were very small. Days passed after the signal was sent. The Verilian fleet floated in the nebula, quiet and tense. Every ship was on high alert, scanning for any movement in the dark. Even the children were kept close, told to remain silent. They were afraid that even a single mistake would reveal their location to the cracks. Hunger and fatigue weighed heavily on the survivors, but the fear of discovery was worse. Every shadow, every small blip on the scanner made the heart race. Despite the fear, the Verilians tried to keep normal life as much as possible. Engineers repaired damaged systems. Scientists examined the nebula's gases, trying to find ways to survive longer in the harsh conditions. Teachers continued lessons for the children, teaching history, science, and art. Music still echoed through the corridors of the ships, soft melodies that reminded the people of better times. These small acts kept their spirits alive, though faintly, in a world that had almost given up hope. One evening, Lauren noticed something unusual. A faint energy fluctuation appeared at the edge of the sensor range. It was weak and irregular, barely noticeable among the nebula's natural interference. He blinked and adjusted the readings, thinking it was a mistake or a false reading caused by cosmic radiation. But the fluctuation persisted. It was unlike anything he had seen before. The pattern didn't match Crack's technology, and it didn't look like any normal ship or asteroid. It was something different. Lauren immediately reported it to Commander Raylena. She leaned over the console, her eyes narrowing as she studied the data. "Could it be a scout?" she asked. Lauren shook his head. "No, ma'am. The energy signature is ancient. It doesn't match any known fleet. I've never seen anything like it." The room fell silent. For the first time in weeks, a spark of curiosity replaced the fear. Perhaps it was hope. Perhaps someone had heard their call. The Verilians debated what to do. Some wanted to send a probe to investigate. Others warned that it could be a trap. The Cracks had been known to use deception to lure survivors into ambushes. Commander Raylena considered both sides. She knew the risk, but she also understood that they could not afford to wait forever. If it was a friend, they had to respond. If it was the Cracks, they needed to prepare. Finally, she ordered Lauren to trace the source as closely as possible without revealing their own location. For hours, Lauren worked tirelessly. The energy fluctuations grew stronger, yet remained elusive. It was like watching a ghost in the dark, powerful, present, but almost untouchable. As he monitored, he realized that the pattern was moving toward the Verilians' location. A feeling of disbelief washed over him. Could it really be a ship coming to help them? Could it be that someone had answered their desperate call? Meanwhile, within the fleet, the people began to notice subtle changes. The atmosphere of despair that had hung over them for so long seemed lighter, almost imperceptibly. The children played quietly in the corridors. The adults worked with renewed focus. Even Commander Raylena felt her heart lift a little. She reminded herself that hope was dangerous, especially in desperate times. But she couldn't deny the stirring in her chest. Perhaps they were not alone after all. Over the next several days, the energy fluctuations continued to grow. Lauren discovered that the source was moving faster than any known Verilian or Crack ship. It was approaching the nebula at incredible speed, yet remaining just outside their sensors' most detailed scans. The Verilians watched in awe as the strange readings shifted across their instruments. It was something alive, something powerful, and they could feel it even without seeing it. The tension was unbearable. Every moment, the Varelians expected the cracks to find them, to strike before they could learn the truth. But the mysterious presence did not attack. It remained on the edges, almost observing. It was as if the being or ship knew they were hiding, waiting patiently. The Varelians did not dare send a direct message, fearing it might scare away whatever it was. Instead, they continued to watch, hoping that this silent presence was their salvation. One night, the nebula lit up with faint, strange streaks of light, as if the stars themselves were rearranging. Lauren called it a cosmic dance, but no one had words to describe what they were seeing. The patterns in the sky did not match any known celestial phenomenon. The energy readings spiked, pulsing rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. It was a sign of life or intelligence. The Varelians held their breath. Could this be a civilization beyond anything they had ever known? Could it be the answer to their prayers? The days of despair had slowly transformed into a strange, tense excitement. Even those who had given up hope began to imagine possibilities. Could someone come and save them from the cracks? Could they finally survive? The hope was fragile, delicate like a thin crystal that could shatter at the slightest touch. Yet it persisted, hidden beneath layers of fear, grief, and exhaustion. Commander Relena called a meeting with her officers. "We do not know what is coming," she said. "It could be friend. It could be foe. We cannot assume anything. But we must be ready, and we must keep hope alive for our people. If someone is coming, we must survive long enough to meet them." Her words were careful yet inspiring. Even the most hopeless in the fleet nodded silently, their hearts stirred by her conviction. The Varelians continued to prepare. They repaired what systems they could, stockpiled supplies, and reinforced their hiding positions. Every ship in the fleet had to be ready, not knowing what would appear from the void. The sense of waiting was maddening. Some slept, some paced, some stared endlessly at the nebula outside, watching for even the slightest movement. It was a test of patience, endurance, and courage, and then one quiet moment, Lauren's console lit up like a starburst. A massive energy spike registered directly ahead, moving faster than anything the Varelians had ever measured. The fleet's sensors trembled under the readings, and even Commander Relena felt a thrill of fear and excitement. This was it. Something had come. They did not yet know what it was, but for the first time in weeks, the Varelians felt that the universe had not abandoned them. The presence in the void was drawing closer. The Varelians could not see it yet, but they could sense it. Every vibration, every subtle change in the nebula's gases told them that they were not alone. Their prayers, their SOS signals, their desperate calls into the darkness, they had been heard. Somewhere beyond the reach of comprehension, someone had responded. Hope, long thought dead, was stirring again. And though they did not know what would come next, the Varelians understood one thing. The darkest hours often came just before the dawn. Somewhere in the void, a new force was approaching. Something powerful, something human, something that might just change everything. The fleet waited, tense and silent. The signal had been sent, the energy had been detected, and the future, and uncertain as it was, suddenly seemed filled with possibilities. In the quiet of the nebula, for the first time in weeks, the Varelians believed that salvation might truly exist. The universe, which had seemed so cruel, was listening, and soon the answer would arrive. The Varelians had been waiting for what felt like an eternity. Days had stretched into weeks, each moment heavier than the last. The endless darkness of the nebula seemed to press down on their ships, suffocating them with silence. Every sensor scan was met with nothing. The energy signature that Lauren had detected earlier had grown stronger, but it still remained a mystery. The fleet could sense that something was approaching, something unlike anything they had ever known. And then, without warning, it happened. At first, there was only a faint shimmer at the edge of the nebula, like the reflection of sunlight on distant ice. The Varelian crew stared, unsure if their eyes or sensors were deceiving them. But as moments passed, the shimmer grew brighter, forming a shape, a massive silhouette moving through the darkness of space. The nebula seemed to part around it, as if the stars themselves were bowing to its presence. Commander Relena felt her heart tighten. She had never seen anything like it. The shape resolved into a massive ship, dark and imposing, yet elegant in its design. Its hull was scratched and scarred from countless battles, but it glimmered with energy, and the power it radiated made the Varelian ships tremble. The markings on its side were unlike any alien language the Varelians had ever studied, but there was a strange familiarity to them. Lauren leaned over the console, eyes wide. "Commander, it's human." The word hung in the control room like a sudden storm. Humans had been thought extinct in this part of the galaxy. The Terran colonies had vanished generations ago. No one had seen a human warship for centuries. The human ship moved with precision, cutting through the nebula as if the clouds and gases were nothing. It emerged fully from the void, revealing a massive vessel unlike any the Varelians had ever imagined. Its weapons were silent for now, but the design alone was intimidating. Its armor thick, its engines glowing with raw power. It carried itself like a predator, yet there was a sense of purpose in its movement. This was no random traveler. It had come for a reason. The Varelian fleet held its breath. Many had not expected anyone to come. They had prepared for death, accepted the end of their civilization, and yet here it was, a human warship appearing out of nowhere. Some of the younger Varelians could barely comprehend it. They had only heard stories of humans, legends passed down from ancient texts, but the tales spoke of courage, determination, and fierce combat. Now in front of them was living proof. As the humans moved closer, the Varelian sensors detected the energy readings of their weapon systems activating. The ship's turrets rotated silently, scanning the dark void beyond the nebula. The Krax patrols that had been lurking at the edge of the system noticed the humans as well, and their ships began to maneuver, preparing to attack. It was clear that the humans had come with one goal: confrontation. They were not here to negotiate. They were here to fight. The first shots were terrifying. The human weapons fired with precision that seemed impossible. Energy beams tore through the Krax ships with ease, cutting them apart faster than the Varelians could track. Entire enemy squadrons were destroyed in moments, their ships reduced to glowing fragments drifting in the void. The Varelians had never witnessed such efficiency. Even their most advanced fleets could not achieve such results. The humans fought like a force of nature, unstoppable and relentless. Commander Rylena gave orders to her remaining ships to stay hidden but ready. They did not fully understand what they were seeing, but they sensed the power and intelligence behind each human maneuver. The humans were not reckless, they were calculated, precise, and fearless. Every action seemed planned decades in advance, as if they had anticipated every possible move of the Krax. For the first time in weeks, the Varelians felt safe, though still cautious. Lauren watched the display in awe. The humans were engaging multiple Krax ships at once, yet they never seemed to falter. Even when a massive enemy cruiser attempted to flank them, the human vessel fired a concentrated blast of energy that disintegrated the ship instantly. The force of it shook the sensors on the Varelian fleet, and even the most hardened soldiers in Rylena's command crew gasped. The humans were legends come to life. Yet it wasn't only the firepower that amazed the Varelians. It was the presence. The humans projected an aura of confidence and strength that inspired awe. The Varelians, who had been cowering for so long, felt something stir inside them. A tiny spark of hope, fragile but real, began to grow. They realized that perhaps, just perhaps, survival was still possible. The battle raged for hours. The Krax were fierce, relentless, and unwilling to retreat. They had killed countless civilizations, and they were certain the Varelians would be next. But the humans fought without hesitation, adapting to every attack, predicting every move. It became clear that the Krax had never faced anything like this before. The human ship, HSS Valkyrie, was a storm in the dark, cutting through enemy forces with terrifying speed and precision. From their hidden positions, the Varelians began to take action as well. Inspired by the humans, they launched small squads of fighters to assist, following the human lead. For the first time in weeks, the Varelians felt like they were part of something greater than themselves. The humans had given them a chance, and they were ready to fight for it. Despite their hope, the Varelians also understood the danger. The human ship was alone against a fleet of Krax forces. They could not interfere too much, for fear of drawing attention to their own positions. But they watched closely, learning from the humans' tactics. They observed how the ship's turrets moved in perfect coordination, how the engines dodged incoming fire, and how the shields absorbed damage that would have destroyed any other vessel. It was a masterclass in combat. As the battle continued, some Varelians began to speak in whispers about the legends of humanity. Stories told of humans' resilience, their courage, and their ability to fight against impossible odds. Many had thought these were myths, tales to inspire young cadets in training. But now they could see the truth. Humans were dangerous, yes, but they were also saviors. The Varelians realized that perhaps the legends had underestimated the scale of human power. The cracks, for the first time, were on the defensive. Their formations, once perfectly coordinated, began to falter under the human assault. Ships collided, beams missed their targets, and confusion spread among the enemy ranks. Commander Raelina and her officers watched the chaos with a mixture of fear and relief. They still did not understand the full capabilities of the human vessel, but they could see that the tide of battle had shifted. Even as the humans tore through the Crack's armada, there was a sense of precision that went beyond simple combat skill. Every shot was calculated, every movement purposeful. It was as if the ship itself had a mind, reacting instantly to threats and predicting outcomes before they occurred. The Varelians could only watch and learn, their admiration growing with every passing moment. The children of the fleet, who had been huddled in hiding, peeked through observation windows. For the first time, they saw heroes not just in stories but in reality. The human ship was not just a machine. It was a symbol, a beacon of hope. The Varelians began to whisper among themselves, a quiet excitement that had been absent for too long. Perhaps they were not doomed. Perhaps survival was still within reach. Hours passed and the battle finally began to subside. The Crack's ships that had survived retreated into the darkness, nursing their losses and vowing to return. The human ship, though battered, remained standing. It floated in the nebula like a sentinel, its weapons still charged, ready for any further threats. Commander Raelina gave orders to maintain position and observe. She wanted to approach, to communicate, but she waited for the humans to make the first move, and then the Varelian sensors detected a transmission. It was weak but unmistakable. The voice was human, calm, and authoritative. "We received your message," it said. Those few words sent a shockwave through the fleet. The Varelians had waited for help for weeks, expecting silence. And now they had a response. Someone had heard them. Someone had come. For the first time since the Crack's attacks began, the Varelians allowed themselves to breathe. The battle had been won and hope had returned. They still did not know the humans' intentions fully or what lay ahead. But one thing was certain: they were no longer alone. The human warship had emerged from the void, and the galaxy would never be the same again. In the quiet that followed, the Varelians began to plan. They would survive. They would rebuild. And perhaps with the humans at their side, they might even fight back against the Cracks and reclaim their worlds. The arrival of the human ship was more than a rescue. It was a turning point, a new chapter in the history of a race that had almost lost everything. And somewhere in the depths of the ship, the humans prepared for the next move. They had come for a reason, and the Varelians were about to discover just how far the strength of humanity could reach. The battle had left a trail of destruction in the nebula. Pieces of Crack ships floated among the swirling gases, glowing faintly like dying stars. The Varelians had never witnessed anything like it. Their own fleet, small and battered, hovered cautiously behind their hiding places, watching the human warship as it prepared for the next strike. The HSS Valkyrie, as the sensors revealed, was badly damaged in some areas, yet it radiated a confidence and power that inspired awe. Every shot it fired, every maneuver it executed seemed precise and deliberate. The Cracks were not gone. Even after their retreat, scouts and smaller ships lurked at the edges of the nebula, waiting for an opportunity to strike back. The humans, despite the damage they had already taken, did not hesitate. They calculated every move with ruthless efficiency, anticipating Crack's attacks even before they occurred. Commander Raelina and her officers observed in silence, trying to understand how one ship could hold back an entire fleet. Lauren, still at the console, could hardly keep his hands from trembling. He had never seen combat on this scale, and yet the humans seemed untouchable. The Valkyrie fired a concentrated beam at a Crack's cruiser attempting to encircle the fleet. The energy cut through the enemy ship's armor like a knife through silk. The Cracks retaliated, launching volleys of missiles and energy blasts, but the humans moved with uncanny speed. Their shields absorbed what would have destroyed any other ship, and countermeasures intercepted incoming attacks. For hours, the battle continued, a deadly dance of fire and strategy in the void of space. Inside the Varelian fleet, the survivors felt a mix of fear and hope. They had expected the end, and yet here they were, witnessing salvation. Still, fear remained. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and the Cracks could turn the tide. Commander Raelina knew this, which is why she made a decision that would change the course of the fight. She ordered every remaining Virelian fighter to join the battle, moving from hiding to assist the humans. It was a risky move. They were few, and their weapons were weak compared to the enemy, but they could no longer remain silent spectators. The Virelians took a deep breath and activated their engines. Small squads of fighters emerged from the shadows of the nebula, weaving through debris and launching their own attacks. At first, the humans did not acknowledge them, focused entirely on the cracks. But as the Virelian ships joined the fray, a subtle coordination began to form. The humans adapted to the additional forces with ease, guiding the Virelians' attacks with simple signals. It was not an order, it was guidance, almost instinctual. The Virelians realized they were no longer alone in their struggle. They had allies who knew exactly how to fight the enemy. The battle intensified. The cracks attempted to focus their fire on the Valkyrie, hoping to destroy it before it could fully engage their forces. But the human ship was ready. Its turrets rotated, its shields flared, and its engines moved with perfect timing. One crack's battleship fired a massive plasma cannon, aiming directly at the human vessel. The Valkyrie countered by releasing a gravitational mine, a device that warped space around the enemy ship. The explosion tore the crack's ship apart, and debris scattered in all directions. Even the Virelians, hardened by weeks of survival, could not hide their awe. The human ship's weapons were not the only thing remarkable. The crew worked as one, every action synchronized with the others. Systems that would normally take hours to repair were fixed in minutes. Injured personnel were attended to, while simultaneously maintaining operational effectiveness. It was a level of coordination the Virelians had never seen. Lauren noted that the humans were not just fighting, they were operating as a single organism, each part responding instantly to the whole. Despite the success, the Valkyrie was not invincible. Its hull had begun to show signs of severe damage. Heat vents glowed red, and the shields flickered under constant attack. Commander Relena could see the strain on the human ship, and she knew that if it fell, her people would be in immediate danger. She made another bold decision. The Virelian fleet would move closer, not to attack directly, but to support the humans. They used their smaller ships to intercept stray cracks missiles and provide distractions, allowing the Valkyrie to maneuver freely. The Virelians were terrified, yet determined. They had no other choice. For weeks they had hidden, surviving only through caution. Now they were stepping into the fire, following a force that seemed almost invincible. Young pilots who had never seen combat before were now firing alongside seasoned warriors, guided by human signals and tactics. Each success gave them courage. Each moment of survival reminded them why they were fighting. Time seemed to lose meaning in the midst of the chaos. Hours of battle felt like minutes, and yet each second was critical. The cracks were relentless, launching waves of attacks in attempts to overwhelm the combined forces. They underestimated the humans' skill, and even more dangerously, they underestimated the Virelians' newfound courage. Together, the alliance became something unexpected, a force that even the cracks could not predict. The human ship's captain finally communicated directly with Commander Relena via a secure channel. "We are holding the line," the voice said. "Calm, measured, and full of authority. Do not interfere unless necessary. We will need your cooperation shortly." The words were simple, but they carried a weight of experience. Relena understood. They were being guided, but the humans trusted them to act when the moment came. It was a delicate balance between control and partnership. As the battle continued, the Virelian pilots began to notice patterns. The humans were not just reacting, they were predicting. They seemed to anticipate cracks' movements, adjusting shields and weapons even before attacks arrived. Lauren theorized that the humans had spent generations learning the art of war, refining tactics in ways the Virelians could not even imagine. Each move was deliberate, designed to maximize efficiency and minimize risk. Despite the precision, there were moments of chaos. Crack ships occasionally breached the Valkyrie's perimeter, explosions lighting up the nebula in bursts of red and gold. The Virelians helped as best they could, intercepting missiles, blocking energy beams, and rescuing crew members from disabled ships. The coordination was imperfect at first, but under the humans' guidance, they improved rapidly. The small fleet, once scattered and hopeless, was now fighting with a purpose they had thought lost forever. After what felt like an eternity, the tide began to turn. Crack ships were being destroyed faster than they could respond. Retreats turned into routes, and even the most experienced Crack's commanders began to pull back. The humans had inflicted heavy damage, and the Varelians, inspired by their allies, began to take greater risks, striking with precision and daring they never thought possible. Yet even in victory, the cost was clear. The Valkyrie's hull was heavily damaged, its shields flickering. The humans were exhausted, but they did not falter. They continued to fight with a determination that seemed almost superhuman. Relena realized that while the humans were saving them now, they would soon need help themselves. She had to find a way to support the ship before it was too late. The Varelian fleet adapted quickly. Engineers began preparing repair drones and emergency supplies to send to the human ship. Medical personnel readied themselves to treat injured crew members. Communication officers established secure channels to coordinate every move. The fleet had become a living support system, acting in tandem with the human warship. Together, they were no longer just survivors. They were part of a coordinated force capable of resisting even the cracks. As night fell over the nebula, or at least the Varelians' version of night, the battle reached a momentary lull. The cracks had retreated, leaving only scouts to monitor the area. The human ship hovered in the center, its weapons still ready, its presence dominating the battlefield. Commander Rylena and her officers gathered to assess the situation. They were exhausted yet exhilarated. For the first time since the Cracks' invasion began, they felt that survival was not only possible but probable. Lauren, exhausted from hours at the console, finally allowed himself a small smile. The humans had changed everything. They had come out of the void not as saviors in stories or legends, but as living, breathing proof that hope was real. The Varelians could feel it in their bones. Their fight was far from over, but now they had a chance. They had allies, strength, and guidance. They had the humans. In the quiet moments after the battle, the survivors of the Varelian fleet took stock of their losses and victories. They had watched their allies fight like forces of nature, witnessed destruction that had terrified them, and yet found courage they never thought they had. They knew the cracks would return, but they also knew that together, they could resist. And for the first time, the word hope carried real meaning. The Valkyrie remained a symbol above all else. It had emerged from the void, battered but unbroken, to show the Varelians that survival was possible. The humans had come not as conquerors, not as invaders, but as warriors, guides, and allies. And in the vast cold emptiness of the nebula, the Varelians realized something extraordinary. They were no longer alone, and they would not die quietly in the shadows. The alliance, fragile yet unbreakable, had begun. Together, they would face whatever the Cracks sent next. And somewhere deep within the Valkyrie, the humans prepared for the next move, knowing that their mission had only just begun. The battlefield was quiet now, but the silence was different. It was no longer heavy with fear. It was filled with possibility. The Varelian fleet hovered among the glowing fragments of destroyed Crack ships, their hulls battered, their sensors still alert. They had survived. For the first time in weeks, the Varelians felt something they had thought impossible: relief. Yet even as they caught their breath, they knew the fight was not over. The Cracks were cunning and relentless, and their retreat meant only a temporary pause. The human warship, the HSS Valkyrie, floated at the center of the nebula, battered but standing tall. Its engines glowed faintly, and smoke curled from sections of its hull where shields had failed. The human crew moved with quiet efficiency, repairing damage, treating injuries, and monitoring the surrounding space. Commander Relena watched them from her ship, feeling a mixture of awe and gratitude. She had never imagined a force like this could exist in her lifetime. It was more than a ship. It was a symbol, a promise that even the darkest moments could be overcome. Communication lines between the Varelians and the humans crackled to life. The voice on the other end was calm but authoritative, commanding attention without demanding it. "We have received your message," said the human captain. Those words, simple yet profound, echoed across the Varelian fleet. For weeks, they had sent signals into the void and received nothing, and now, after despair had settled into their bones, someone had answered. The Varelians felt tears welling in their eyes. They were no longer alone. The human captain explained their situation briefly. The Valkyrie had been traveling through the void for decades, seeking signs of life and threats to the galaxy. They had been away from known human colonies for generations, thought lost to time, yet they had remained active and vigilant. When they detected the Varelian distress signal, they had responded immediately. They did not come as conquerors or observers, they came to help, to protect, to give hope to those who had none. Commander Rylena ordered her fleet to move closer, cautiously so the humans could assess their condition. Engineers and medical officers from the Valkyrie prepared to assist the Varelians, offering supplies, repairs, and medical attention. For the survivors, the gesture was overwhelming. They had been hiding, starving, and injured for weeks. The humans brought fresh energy, food, and the knowledge that someone stronger was watching over them. It was the first sign of safety they had felt in a long time. The Varelians began sharing information about their fleet, the state of their colonies, and the extent of the crack's destruction. The humans listened carefully, taking notes, scanning the nebula, and analyzing every bit of data. They asked questions not out of curiosity alone, but to understand how best to protect the fleet. Lauren marveled at their thoroughness. Every action had a purpose, every word was measured, every system was monitored. It was like watching a living, breathing strategy unfold before his eyes. With the immediate danger of the crack scouts mitigated, the humans suggested a plan. They proposed moving the Varelian fleet to a safer region of the nebula, where they could regroup and repair without the constant threat of attack. They also offered coordinates to hidden Terran supply depots and colonies beyond the galactic rim, places the Varelians had never dreamed existed. These locations would provide resources, protection, and opportunities to rebuild. For the Varelians, it felt like discovering a new world after centuries of darkness. The alliance between the Varelians and humans began to solidify. Small groups of Varelian engineers and medical officers worked alongside the humans, learning new techniques, observing advanced technology, and exchanging knowledge. The humans were patient teachers guiding without condescension. They explained the Valkyrie's systems, showing how energy distribution, weapons, and shields worked in unison. The Varelians absorbed the information eagerly, realizing that this knowledge could help them not only survive, but eventually fight back against the cracks. Despite the relief, the Varelians did not forget the cost of the battle. They mourned those lost, counting bodies and damaged ships. The Valkyrie's crew joined them in this solemn moment, acknowledging the sacrifices made. Yet even in grief there was a sense of pride. The Varelians had survived against overwhelming odds, and they had done so with help from a force they could hardly believe existed. The encounter with humanity had changed everything. Over the next few days, the Varelians worked tirelessly alongside the humans to repair their fleet. Broken ships were patched, engines recalibrated, and weapon systems restored. The process was exhausting, but the presence of the humans made it possible. Where despair had once dominated, determination now filled the corridors of every ship. Children laughed cautiously as teachers resumed lessons, engineers debated strategies, and medics moved swiftly from one patient to another. Life was returning, slowly but surely, to the fleet. As the repairs continued, Commander Rylena and her officers met with the human captain to discuss strategy. They analyzed cracks patterns, projected potential future attacks, and discussed ways to defend Varelian worlds. The humans shared maps, historical data, and intelligence gathered from other regions of the galaxy. They explained how humanity had survived and thrived despite conflicts, wars, and near-extinction events. The Varelians listened, learning not just tactics but resilience, strategy, and hope. Meanwhile, the Valkyrie's crew continued patrolling the surrounding space. Their sensors were active, scanning for any remnants of the Crack's fleet. They coordinated with Varelian scouts, teaching them how to detect threats and respond quickly. The Varelians began to see patterns in the void that they had never noticed before, learning to anticipate dangers and avoid ambushes. The humans did not just fight. They taught the Varelians how to think like warriors, preparing them for battles to come. As the fleet stabilized, stories of the humans began to spread among the Varelian people. Children asked questions, adults exchanged whispers, and the elders recounted legends they had once thought exaggerated. The humans had emerged from the void, seemingly invincible, to save a race on the brink of extinction. They were more than warriors. They were a beacon of hope, a living testament that even in the darkest moments survival and courage were possible. Commander Rylena began to realize that the arrival of the Valkyrie was more than a rescue. It was a turning point. The Varelians had been waiting for someone, anything, to help them, but the humans had done more than that. They had restored belief in the impossible, given the Varelians the tools and knowledge to survive, and inspired them to imagine a future beyond hiding. The fleet was no longer merely surviving, they were beginning to dream again. Lauren, now a key liaison between the Virillian engineers and the humans, reflected on everything that had happened. He thought of the weeks of hiding, the despair, the endless nights of scanning for signals that might never come. And now, here they were, standing among allies with the possibility of reclaiming not just survival but freedom. The humans had shown them that even a single force, if skilled and determined, could change the course of an entire war. With the fleet repaired and morale restored, the Virillians began planning their next moves. They considered returning to their home worlds to reclaim what was lost, cautiously exploring the potential to strike back at the cracks. The humans offered to accompany them, providing advanced strategy, technology, and firepower. The Virillians could hardly believe it. A race thought lost, feared extinct, had returned to lead them out of darkness. The Valkyrie's crew took time to teach the Virillians about communication networks, navigation techniques, and combat strategies. The Virillians absorbed every lesson eagerly, realizing that knowledge could be as powerful a weapon as any beam or missile. The humans explained the importance of alliances, intelligence gathering, and anticipation of enemy actions. The Virillians, once isolated and hopeless, now had a guide to navigating the galaxy's dangers. In quiet moments, the Virillian survivors reflected on their journey. They remembered the destruction of their worlds, the endless void, and the despair that had consumed them. And yet they also remembered the moment the Valkyrie had appeared, emerging from the darkness like a storm of fire and hope. That moment had changed everything. They had not only survived, they had been given a chance to live fully again, to rebuild, to fight. Children, once silent and fearful, now explored the corridors of the repaired ships with cautious joy. Scientists resumed experiments they had abandoned for fear of attack. Artists painted and sang songs celebrating survival. Every act of creation, every step forward was a testament to the humans' arrival. The Virillians had been given a gift beyond measure, the chance to reclaim their civilization. As days turned into weeks, the alliance solidified. The Virillians no longer viewed the humans as mysterious saviors. They were partners, teachers, and friends. Together, they prepared for the next chapter of their story: survival, rebuilding, and perhaps one day victory against the cracks. The nebula, once a tomb, now felt like a starting point, a place of hope and strategy, a place where two races could forge a future together. And in the quiet of the Valkyrie, the human captain looked over the fleet of Virillian ships. They were battered, scarred, and fragile, but they had heart, courage, and determination. The humans had answered a signal from the edge of despair, and in doing so had given life back to an entire species. The journey ahead would be long and danger would come again, but for now hope had returned. The Virillians were no longer lost in the void. The fleet slowly prepared to move out of the nebula, heading toward safe coordinates provided by the humans. Supplies were distributed, repairs finalized, and the first cautious plans for reclaiming Virillian worlds were drafted. The alliance was more than survival. It was a promise of a new beginning. The Virillians had been saved not just by power, but by strategy, courage, and the belief that life could continue. For the first time in generations, the Virillians looked toward the stars not with fear, but with hope. The humans had arrived and the galaxy was no longer empty. Together they would rebuild, fight, and thrive. And somewhere in the depths of the Valkyrie, the humans prepared for the journey ahead, knowing that the spark of hope they had ignited would grow into a flame capable of changing the course of history forever.